Hi, I'm Jenny Fish from One Big Happy Yarn Company. We want to be your yarn shop no matter where you live. Welcome back to our Etta Tee Knit Along. Etta is a top-down sweater designed by Allison Green, and we're knitting it with a Barocco Summer Sesame yarn. If you still need a kit, check out onebighappy.com. Today I'll show you how to cast on, work the yoke, including simple lace, follow a chart, and fix any oopsies you might run across as you knit. Don't let any of this scare you. I'm gonna walk you through it. Let's get started. First thing we need to do is cast on. I want to go over the needles that I'm using. I'm using the ChowGoo Interchangeable. I have one of the longer cords here, and I'm going to be casting on with a size 4. These are the tips. If you've never used Interchangeable before, they usually have some kind of locking mechanism or a screw-in type. This one screws in. I'll show you that here. And then it has this little pin that conveniently slides into the hole, and then you can just tighten it up. And then you'll do the same with the other side. I'm choosing these interchangeables because we start out with one size and then we switch to another size. It just makes it convenient so that I'm not having to deal with the 2 separate sets of needles. I get to keep with the same cord and just change out the tips. Also, it has the hole that you use to tighten up your needles. Also comes in handy later on when we want to add a lifeline in our lace knitting. So it's all set up there. You can, however, use whatever needles you're comfortable with, whether they be magic loop. The pattern also mentions the 16-inch fixed needles and the 32-inch fixed needles. This is just my preference, and this is what I choose to use to cast on. I'm using the long cord because I'm going to be using the magic loop method. I'm also going to be knitting a smaller version of the sweater just so I can show you each step and keep it pretty simple and break it down into smaller pieces. Now you will follow the pattern sizes and the amounts listed in the pattern. I'm just going to give you a little small version. For my small version, I'm going to cast on 48 stitches using the knitted cast on. To use the knitted cast on, the first thing you want to do is make a slip knot. So I'm going to go ahead and make my slip knot, slide it on my needles. Now for the knitted cast on, you simply knit into the first stitch, wrap your yarn around, you pull this stitch out, twist it, and slide it back on. I'm going to show you that again. You slide into the first stitch as if to knit, wrap your yarn around, pull it out, twist it, and slide it back on. We're going to do a few more here so you have the idea of how to do the knitted cast on. Now for my little sample project, I'm going to cast on 48 stitches. I've worked out the math, and the reason why I chose the 48 stitches is because it's going to help me show you each step of the project along the way, and the math will all work out. This sweater won't really fit a human when we're done, my sample, but by following the numbers in your pattern and the directions in the pattern, you'll make one that'll fit you. 48. Okay, this is what I'm going to use for my sample. I'm going to come back and look at all my stitches. I marked my center point with just this locking stitch marker. One of the things I do want to show you as I'm looking through my cast on stitches, you see this little gap in this one stitch right here. That is because if you look on the underside, one of the little nubs, this green one right here, so cute, but it is in between that stitch, so it's causing this little gap right here. That's perfectly fine. When we go around the next round, it's going to close it up and disappear. It's just the nature of how this yarn is and how it works in your knitting. But I did want to point this out because it looks a little odd and a little different, and it looks like that stitch is messed up. It's not. It's there. It's secure. Everything's going to be fine. Now, I am using the magic loop method for this little sample that I'm showing you. And I always like to mark the center of the work when I'm doing magic loop, just so that I can know where to bend my needle. I've got 24 stitches on this side, 24 stitches on that side. I've bent my cord. I'm going to pull these down and get into setup position for magic loop. Okay, I've got my working yarn in the back. I can now take this locking stitch marker off. I don't need it anymore. I just had it there to mark that one spot. Now, when you're working in the round, you want to make sure that all of the bottom row of your stitches are on the inside. So I've got them in between there. You can do the twist, the first and the last stitch on here. Your first stitch is a slip knot. So one of the ways to secure your work while you're knitting in the round is you can pop this first stitch off and transfer the last stitch over to the first needle and the first stitch over to the last needle. That kind of secures that and less chance of having a gap in your first round. Kind of like that little trick there. Okay, so now that I've got everything set up, I'm going to pull my back needle. And according to the pattern, the first round is a purl round. Make sure that you don't grab your tail. A lot of times I like to just put some kind of little knot in my tail so I don't accidentally grab it. So that's my little trick. Okay, so I've got everything secured. We're just going to purl one round here. Now, as you're working with this yarn, you'll see I've got another one of those little nubs. Just keep going. Sometimes it'll hit you in the middle of a stitch. That stitch will show up a little bit bigger, but when you come back around on your next row and knit into that stitch, it just kind of plays out. So it's okay. Don't worry about it. Just go with the flow on these. It's because of those little nubs that this yarn finishes with a fabric that has a little bit of texture to it, and I really like the way that looks. I'm going to continue purling, and when I get back around, the next round is going to be knit. By purling one round and knitting the next round, that is going to create the garter stitch pattern. When you're working in the round, you have to flip between knit and purl to get that garter stitch look. It's a little different than if you were knitting flat. We're doing the garter stitch because what the garter stitch will do is prevent the fabric from rolling. So we have right here, this is the garter stitch around the collar, and that's going to keep it from rolling and allowing it to lay flat. So I'm going to finish purling this round, then I'm going to knit around. I'm going to follow the pattern instructions, do that one more time, and then it's time to switch out our needles. I'll show you how to do that. Now that we've finished our 4 rounds of garter, we're ready to switch out our needles to the larger tips so that we can continue on with the yoke of our sweater. What I'm going to do first is change out my back needle. I do that by sliding this little pin in here, putting this back in my case in the size slot so I don't forget it, grabbing the larger one. Now, one of the tricks that I want to show you that you can do when you have the interchangeables is just changing one at a time. So for the first round, I'm going to leave the smaller size with my active stitches on it, and I'm going to purl this first whole round with the larger size on my active needle. This helps prevent any tightness that may occur to the stitches that are knit with the smaller size needle. If you're not using interchangeable needles, then you just grab your next pair and start knitting right away onto what you had before. You don't have to slip all the stitches onto a whole nother set of needles. I'm going to continue purling around, and then I'll show you how to change that other tip. So I've gone one complete round doing the purl stitch. I have my larger needle in back. Now I need to switch out this front needle to the larger size. Then I'm set up to continue knitting and start the lace. Okay, we're going to slide the pin in, unscrew the tip, get our larger, screw that in, use the pin to tighten it up, and then I'm going to be sure to put this back in my case where it goes so I don't forget which size it is. All right, we're ready to start the lace. Lace can be a little intimidating when you look at it and see all this fine work. It's super easy. It's not much more than your normal stitches. Now, one thing about lace, like when you're making a big project with the thin yarn and everything, it looks a little jumbled and it looks kind of messy. But the magic of lace is once you block it, then you get to see the stitch definition. You get to see where the holes are and the pattern of the textured stitches that you're doing for your increases. But don't worry, this pattern, it's a 2-row repeat, and I'll walk you through every step of the way. First thing we need to do is figure out the chart. This has a very simple lace chart to it. It has 6 different stitches in the key code. You have your knit 2 together, SSK, a yarn over, and then we have a left leaning increase and a right leaning increase. That's all there is to it. So when we look at the chart, what you need to do is find out your size, look at your pattern, and do a little decoding. The first thing we're going to do is find how many repeats for our size. Earlier I told you to go through and highlight or circle your size throughout the whole pattern. Here we're going to do that, and it'll already be circled or highlighted. Now I used the 44.5 size, so I'm going to have 13 repeats in my sweater, and that's how many times I'm going to repeat the chart pattern. But it also tells me how many rounds of that chart pattern. It goes from 1 to 62. In here, I'm only going to go to line 50. So I have highlighted line 50 on my chart. It also gives me another number, and it says work rounds 1 through, and it has a number, and that's the 50 that I find in my chart over here. And then it says stitch total and another number. Now on mine it's a 24, and it says stitches per chart repeat. It gets a little confusing, but I want to let you know that that 24 is how many stitches are going to be between each repeat. So we are going for 13 repeats all the way up to row 50, and then there's 24 stitches in that repeat. And it starts out with 8, and you build up by the increases to 24. That's for the sweater that I'm making. Yours will be different according to what size that you're making, and it'll be the one that you have circled. But with all that wording in there, I kind of just wanted to break it down and make it a little bit more simpler so you could see where you fit in the pattern. Now that we've gone over all that, I also want to show you each of the stitches. So I'm going to put this aside here. Here is a little swatch that I made. I made this with some worsted weight yarn so you could see what it looks like. This is a yarn over right here, and then we've got our knit 2 together. It's a right leaning decrease. We have an SSK right here. That's this stitch right here. That is a left leaning decrease. That's our first row. Pardon me, I did rows because I knit this flat, but we'll be in the sweater be knitting in the round. So that'll be round 1. And then round 2, we have another knit 2 together, which is a right leaning decrease, a yarn over, then we knit 3, another yarn over right here, we knit 3, yarn over, and then another decrease here. That is a left leaning decrease. So that is what is in this pattern. As we get into the next repeat of the actual lace, then I'm going to show you the increases that add to this wedge portion right here. And there are some increases that you do right through here, and I'll show you how to do those as we go along. So let's go back to my little sample here. We are ready to start our chart. So as I look at my chart, the first box is empty, and according to my key, that empty box means to knit. So my first 2 stitches are knits. Again, I'm using the magic loop method. So I've got my stitches in the starting position. I'm going to pull the back needle forward. So I'm going to knit 1, knit 2. Then I have a slash mark, and it is facing towards the right. And according to my key code, that means knit 2 together. So I'm going to slide my needle under 2 stitches, and I'm going to knit those 2 together, just like that. Then I have a circle, and that circle means a yarn over. So I'm going to take my yarn up and over. Then I have a blank box, which means I'm going to knit another circle. I'm going to bring my yarn over. And then I have a slash mark going to the left. And that means SSK, which is a left leaning decrease. So I'm going to slip 1, slip 2, and then I'm going to scoop those 2 up through here and knit through the back loop. So that is that decrease. And then our next stitch is a blank box, and we're going to knit 1. That is the first repeat of our chart. At this point, I want to go ahead and put in a stitch marker so that I know I need to have 8 stitches between here, because this is the first round on my chart. We want to ring so it can just slide right on there and hold our spot. I'm going to show you that repeat one more time. We are going to knit 2. That's 1, 2, and then I'm going to knit 2 together, a yarn over, knit 1, yarn over, SSK, that's a slip, slip, knit through the back loop, like that, and then knit 1. Now, when you have magic loop, you don't usually keep a marker at the very beginning of your work because it just slides around on this needle. What I like to do when I'm working a knitting pattern in the round is for my first marker of the round, after my first repeat, I make it one color, and then the rest I change to a different color. That way I know when I get here, I see this green one, okay, I'm at the beginning of the round. It's just a way to clue me in by using 2 different colors. So I have finished knitting around the first round following the instructions in the chart. I have marked each repeat with a stitch marker. My first one's in one color, and then the rest are in other colors. You'll have different number depending on your pattern size. Now we are going to round 2 on the chart. So I'm going to move my magnet up, and we are going to stop it at round 2. So to start this one, it's just a tiny bit different than our first one that we did. And by that, our yarn overs are going to be in a different place. So we are going to knit 1, then we're going to knit 2 together, and then we yarn over, and then we knit 3. So we're going to knit from that yarn over that we did on the row before, and then knit 1 or 2, and then we're going to knit the third one. Again, this is a yarn over from the row before. There's no foundation stitch underneath of that. So that is what gives you the open gap in your knitting. So that's knit 3. Then we're going to do a yarn over, and an SSK. So we're going to slip, slip, and then knit through the back loop. Right through there. There we go. That is our first repeat of the second round. Go ahead and slide your marker. And we know that there's 8 stitches here, so we just want to go back, double count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Awesome, I got everything there. That's usually a clue if you've missed a yarn over from the row before, or if you've done something wrong. Once you finish that repeat, go ahead and just take a quick count. Make sure that you're at however many stitches are in that round, just to make sure that there's nothing that you messed up that you could fix now instead of later. It's always easier to catch it sooner rather than later. Okay, we're going to knit 1, knit 2 together, yarn over. We're going to knit 3, so this is the yarn over from the row before. There's 1, 2, there's the yarn over from the row below, 3, and then we're going to do the SSK, which is slip, slip, knit through the back loop. We're going to go ahead and continue this through the entire round. And then you're going to do 4 rows of straight stockinette. Then we're going to be starting the round that includes the increases. And I've got that already ready for you on this little sample over here, because I want to jump right in and show you how to do the increase. So on this piece right here, I'm going to move my marker up to round 7. So on this one, I have done my first 2 rounds of the lace pattern, and I've done 4 rounds of straight knitting or stockinette. Now I'm ready to start the increase round. According to my pattern, I'm going to knit 2, and then I'm going to do the increase. So here's 1 and 2. So now we are doing the right leaning increase. To do that, we are going to kind of twist our knitting forward, and we are going into the purl bump of the stitch below the one we just knitted. We're going to stick our needle in there, so you kind of twist your wrist towards you. You go into that purl bump and put that on your left needle, and then you put your right needle as if it's knit, wrap the yarn, and bring it through. This brings up and adds an additional stitch, and there is no gap with this increase. So we're going to continue following our chart. The next step is knit 2 together, and then we have a yarn over, a knit 1, a yarn over. We have the SSK. So we're slip, slip, knit through the back loop. And then we have our left leaning increase. Now to do the left leaning increase, we are going to go into the purl bump of the next stitch in our pattern. So I'm going to twist my wrists and my work towards me. I'm going to take my active needle and go into the purl bump right here. We're going to lift it up and over, slide it onto our active needle, and we're going to knit into it. And then we have knit 1, and that finishes that repeat. We've just increased 2, so we went from 8 stitches to 10. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So now I have 10 stitches in this repeat here. I want to show you one more time. Just keep in mind that the right increase, you're going through the purl bump on the right side. The left leaning increase, you're going through the purl bump on the left side. We have knit 2, 1, and 2, and then our right leaning increase, we're going to pull this forward. We're going to grab this little purl bump right here onto our left needle. Then we're going to knit into that, make that seamless So pretty, no gaps or anything. We just made one stitch right there. Then we're going to knit 2 together, yarn over, knit 1, yarn over, SSK, slip 1, slip 2, knit those 2 through the back loop like that, and then we're going to make our left leaning increase, slide our work towards us, go through the purl bump in the back, bring it forward, and then knit that last stitch. We're going to continue following the chart all the way up until you get to the size that you are required for your size, and you've done lace. That is that simple, that easy. So now that you know lace, here's a couple of tips to help keep you on track. Here's the chart. As you can see, it is a wedge, and I want to put that in context in the actual sweater for you. In the center here, we have a straight line. Each one of these is a knitted stitch. That is this section right through here. So your wedge of your repeat is right here. This is the wedge. It literally like fits right there. That kind of helps you as you're knitting along to know how your increases are affecting your sweater. This allows you to create these sleeves later on. But I wanted to give you just a visual reference real quick of here's your chart and here it is in your sweater. Now you're ready to knit the yoke. If you have any questions as you go along, leave a comment for me below. I'm happy to help. Remember, you can get a kit and all the supplies you need at onebighappy.com. Click the link in the description box to learn more. Next time, I'll show you how to add short row shaping, divide for the sleeves, and test the fit so you can keep on knitting the body. Be sure to hit the subscribe button below and click the bell to be notified every time we have a new video. Happy knitting!